Welcome to Talaterra, a podcast about freelance educators working in natural resource fields and environmental education. Who are these educators? What do they do? Join me, and let's find out together. This is your host, Tania Marien. Today, my guest is Steve Heatherington. Steve is an alpaca shepherd who, together with his wife Sue, operates Welsh Valley Alpacas in Wales. Steve offers support services to alpaca owners and offers workshops for individuals interested in owning alpacas. Steve also welcomes the public to his farm and creates unique learning experiences for visitors. Our conversation begins with Steve sharing his earliest memories of enjoying nature. Sit back and relax as we travel together to a lush green valley in Wales.
Hi, Tania. It's great to be here. It's a long time back. The memory has to go a long way back. I think there's always been a fascination with natural environments and with nature, turning over rocks, looking for bugs, digging up worms and all that kind of stuff. And I thought that was normal. And I thought everybody was like that, but apparently not necessarily. So it's always been something that's been an interest and a passion. And when I was younger and people saying, what are you going to do when you grow up? And one of the things I thought of was being a vet, which I didn't understand exactly what that meant. I really liked animals. I was a bit off people. I was kind of in that awkward teenage stage, and I was thinking, I don't want anything to do with people, just animals. Working as a vet, you spend a lot of time with people, difficult situations often, and then you have to do not so nice things to animals for their good, but nevertheless, it's a challenging kind of environment, really. And so I was totally off beam in terms of how the reality of that compared with to the thoughts. But yeah, so that was my earliest thing, was right from a young child out in the garden playing, out in the yard playing in the in the soil, and just being fascinated by anything the living.
And when did you realize nature was important to you?
I think it was, again, early ages and going through school things and having to make choices about, I really enjoyed certain things. Then you get to the point, you've got to choose which courses you're going to take going forward. And I tended to merge over onto the science side of things, and particularly biology. My favorite subject would have been biology and all its ranges, from the chemistry and the maths side of the detailed stuff down at cellular level, right the way through to full scale animals. And I think that was the growing awareness, growing accumulation of knowledge, but just that's interesting. Wonder what happens if I pull that thread and follow that down and follow. So there's a lot of getting things out of the books out of the library and following information.
Yeah. Was there a moment that made you think, say, okay, this is it? I mean, you have a huge curiosity. Was there a moment, an incident or an event that made you think, okay, this really is important. I'm going to do this?
I guess in some ways I'm a romantic by nature. as well. So reading things, again, it's the kind of the vet thing of not realizing what the reality was about. I fancied very much the idea of living out in the wilds in Canada, and Jack London's book, sort of Call of the Wild, and stories around that just really kind of caught me. And I'm thinking, this is really important. These are valuable parts of the world. Meaning the animals in particular, but the environment as well. And it was kind of a recognition that it sat well with me, and it kind of grew and just became one of those things that was an automatic assumption. So that's how I ended up doing the general degree in biology, and loved every moment of it.
Yeah. And so then your career developed along into the biological sciences or some aspect of that field.
Yeah, it was a very general degree. I specialized, you do a bit more specializing as you're going through the 3 years, but it was particularly animal behavior and also animal physiology, which again is really down to the small. And it's the scale of things from very fine to very large that's there that just amazing from the bacteria and the fungi right through. And I remember one particular lecture we had. I hadn't done much botany for some reason. I'd always been on the animal side, and we did a thing. We were looking at how seeds grow into plants and a whole series of steps and things. And do you know, with a pea, you can see all of the mystery. So I had this lecture, and then I went home, and we had peas on the plate for tea, and I re-lectured the botany lesson we'd had earlier in the day, and I dissected the pea and took it all apart and explained all the parts and how it was going to turn into the leaf, and et cetera, et cetera. So I if you like that kind of thing, it's great. But otherwise, I think I'm probably nightmare to be to be around and to be living with. I'm always finding things. Oh, did you see that? Oh, this is oh dear, yes.
What was your first experience with alpacas?
First experience of alpacas, yes. No, Ben, we lived in a place that we saw some from a distance, and that was it. We just kind of vaguely aware. We moved to where we are now in South Wales, and it's a valley, and we were thinking about what we might use the land for. One of the problems is it used to be a reservoir, so there's a lot of history with the place, and the ground is very wet. That's why they put the reservoir here, and the larger animals were going to be a problem. They would compact the soil and turn it into liquid mud, and it wouldn't be very easy to have either horses or cows or anything like that. And sheep are a bit boring. So we would be looking around. My wife one day said, just humor me. Have a look at this website. She'd been apparently dropping subtle hints, and I hadn't been taking any notice. But we then spent ages. We were late to bed that night because we just spent so much time poring over this website. Decided we need to go and see some. Now, I'm of the opinion that some people have got an alpaca gene. They connect with alpacas deeply. Everybody likes an alpaca, but some people just really get alpacas. I don't think there is an alpaca gene, but it's like there is an alpaca gene. You know what I mean? Just in case anybody thinks. Anyway, so seeing them, that was it. We very quickly changed our language from vaguely possible to, oh, this, yeah, we could have that there. We could, oh, that one. Look at that one. And she was an outstanding, and we still have her. She's one of our. We saw her in the field when we went to visit this farm down in Devon, and we still have her. She's one of our original 5 that we started with. Started with 5 pregnant females, and grew on from there. And that was our first catching the whiff of a scent of something by looking at the website and then actually seeing them and going, oh yes. And it was, yeah, so that was our first experience.
So then how did you take your first alpaca home?
Well, we didn't have to take them home, thankfully. We had them delivered by the people we bought them from. It was a larger breeder, and they were very good in terms of helping us to learn how to do the husbandry, how to look after the alpacas. And I went down and spent a couple of days just doing the practical stuff on the farm with them. And then they actually delivered the animals down to us here, which is just as well, because at the time we didn't have a vehicle or a horse box or whatever that would have been able to transport them. And they delivered them through the gate, and they moved into the middle of the field. We'd spent ages, just in time, managed to get all the fences in place and finished, mostly. And we just they kind of all looked around a bit. And then the people left. We gave them a cup of tea, and off they went. And as they were driving away, all the alpacas were kind of leaning after this horse box disappearing into the. So they're going without us, and so they adjusted very quickly, and they enjoyed being in the field. And we have various things because it's a valley. There's a lot of slopes. There's a reasonable amount of grass, and there's places we took them down to, different fields and things. So they really enjoy the stimulation of new environments and new things going on. So yeah, that was our initial thing, and we didn't realize what we were doing. It was learning. I was all in at the deep end and having to learn a lot of things. It's not that complicated, but it's a lot of things you just haven't done before. We'd had a dog. It's not quite the same as having livestock, which alpacas are. They're not house pets by any means. And so there's a lot to learn, and it's been a great journey, and loved every minute of it, as I say.
Wow. And so you have this delivery.
Yeah.
And then you start Welsh Valley Alpacas after that weekend, after that day?
Fairly soon after, it was kind of, where was that? It would have been March sort of time when they arrived. Our first open day we had was at Easter that year, which would have been early April. I know it moves around, but I remember it was early April that year. So we threw it open. Now we had some friends and local people who, what are they doing down there? We better go and have a look. So we had quite a few people turn up, and they were in the little corral, and I fed them. Well, I didn't know what I was doing. How do you do these open days? It was something we've learned over the years to do. But it was this thing of, okay, they're standing there and they're eating food, and there was a little youngster who was there that we knew, family friend, and he said, "Oh, Steve, do they do tricks?" Which they didn't. No. So it was kind of wanting to share all the time, right from the early stages, wanting to share the alpacas with other people, and there was an interest and a curiosity. Some people thought we were mad, but there was an interest, and I just delight in being able to explain and share things like that with visitors. So
Wow. You started with 5 alpacas. And how many do you have today?
we've currently got 35 today. It goes up and down a bit because we sell some of the youngsters when they're born. So we've had 50 cria. That's the name, that's Spanish word for the offspring over the years. So it's 11 and a half years we've been keeping them now. Learned a lot, lost some, etc. As you do when you've got larger numbers, there can be complications, and we've had our share of both ups and downs. But yeah, currently got 35, which is large. For most people have smaller numbers, so they might have 3, 5, 7-ish would be quite large, and then 35 is really quite large. But they're becoming more common and more frequently seen around through the UK. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was wondering, how large is the alpaca community, not just in the UK, but overall?
Oh, now there's a question. Don't know.
Because I've come across some in the Mojave Desert,
Yeah.
and other places.
They do get around. I mean, they're originally going to be from the high plains, the Altiplano, in South America. So it's Peru, particularly, and Chile, and that kind of area. And that's where they've been for a long, long time, going back to the Incas. And it was probably about 30-ish years ago when in America and Australia they started to become, there was an interest and they started to be imported. And so they're probably about 10, 15 years ahead of us in the UK. There's been a lot of people in America throughout America, up and down, all over the place, and Canada and New Zealand, a large population, a lot of herds in New Zealand, and they got the space. And again, Australia, large herds, and they use the fiber is the product, so it's grown for keeping them for the fleece. Llamas you use as pack animals, so you can trek with them and actually carry weights and things. Alpacas look big, but they're actually full of fluff. Their body is really not as big as they look most of the year, and so the product, as I say, is the fiber. Yeah, so it's grown. I think it's certainly growing in the UK, but you need to get to a certain level, and then it seems to kind of build on, and then the industry behind that, in terms of the working with the fleece and producing the yarn, producing things. In Australia, they've moved on to doing some of the rougher. It's still very fine, but compared to other fibers, but the coarser fiber that is not so useful for making a nice scarf around your neck is really good for making high-end carpets. So there's a lot of the fiber is being used in all kinds of ways. When we started, there were things that weren't being used. You didn't bother with that, throw it away. There's no point in, nobody wants it. Whereas all of the fleece now is being used. It's got a purpose in one way or another. So it's been good to see the way things have grown, and that's following on as it is sort of throughout the world, but particularly in the UK now.
Yeah. And do you develop products then from your fleece?
Yeah, how do you do something that's a bit different? We've tended to not go. Now, okay, I've read the book, I've seen the videos on YouTube, I know how to spin. Not as easy as that, and we know that, but I thought I'll have a go. It was interesting. And the the quoted theory is that if you spend 10,000 hours on something, you can become an expert. I didn't have 10,000 hours to spare, and I'm not sure that it would even after that I would be an expert. So there's a lot of work. It's a skill. It's an art. It's not just a scientific thing. You can't do it just with knowledge. You have to have the feel for it, etc. So we didn't really go down the spinning and the yarn route, but we've been using our fleece to produce things using felting techniques. So it's wet felting. So you card the fiber, lay it out, and then you're using soap. We use a natural olive-based soap, and then the fiber goes in together with the water and the soap. You can work it in together, a bit of energy, and you sometimes get those little lumps in the washing machine or the tumble dryer where you got from sweaters, all the fiber goes together and lint, and it kind of goes into quite a solid compact. That's felted, so you can produce things. So we've done a lot of things. You can get bits of felt you stick on the bottom of chairs and things to protect the floors, but I'm not talking about that. We do scarves, we do a variety of things you could use as artistic things or wall hangings and that kind of thing. So that's been the thing we've been working on. We're currently working on another project, which is secret. No, it's still in the early stages, so we're still sort of working that one through as a replacement clothing item. Which will give you the warmth, the lightness, the insulation properties of the alpaca fiber is just amazing. And it's then a sustainable and a natural product rather than some of all the kind of the outdoor fleece things that people wear, which produce tiny little bits that end up, the bits of plastic end up in the oceans and all that kind of thing. So it's an alternative to that. It's a work in progress. We're still on the journey with that, but that's the kind of thing we've been doing.
So early on in your schooling, you had an interest in becoming a veterinarian, and you kind of what I'm hearing is that you kind of shied away from that, and then you've come full circle, and here you are.
Yeah, I think it was a reality check about was I going to get the grades, the demand for the competition for the places at university is very high for veterinary work, and also it wasn't quite the rosy viewed thing of working with animals only and not people. So, but we'd had a dog, but I'd never had an opportunity to do the kind of things we've been doing, and I didn't realize there was a shepherd in me just waiting to be expressed. I'd never had the opportunity. I'd worked in an office. After university, I trained in environmental health. So the public health aspect, so it's all the food hygiene and the air pollution and housing conditions, etc. The wide range of things. So that was a very much me kind of shaped job, but it never had the opportunity to express the shepherding side of things until we had the alpacas. And I just found it's just a natural part of me, and I love it. So it's interesting journey for that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because I was wondering what magic do alpacas have? Do you think that people who with this gene that you mentioned earlier, is it the unexpressed shepherd in all of them, or is it something else, do you think?
It may be that. I think it may be something else, because there's something when you look at an alpaca. We've got people who come to visit. We do birthday treats and that kind of things. People will come to small groups of people, and then we can spend time among the alpacas. We go and we get in the field with them, and the alpacas are used to that, so they'll stay around. And you're watching the alpacas, and then you suddenly notice they're watching you. And there's something behind the eyes. With sheep, they're a bit kind of a bit dull and a bit kind of not so bright, really. I'm biased, but nevertheless, my experience has been sheep are not quite so bright. And the alpacas, they're looking back at you. You realize that you're being examined as well as you're watching and examining them. And I think there's that kind of connection with the animals. They're very calm and very calming to be around. Generally, apart from when they're fighting, generally very placid and just very, create a calming atmosphere. They're used as intervention animals into hospitals or hospices or with children who have got learning disabilities or that kind of thing. So they're very sensitive kind of animal. So there's that kind of interaction with them is quite different to a lot of. There's nothing quite like them. I think is where I would come down to.
So you mentioned your public programs. Let's talk about your public programs.
Sure.
You have organized farm days, open farm days, or sorry, farm open days is
Yeah. Farm open
yes,
days.
and which are huge ticketed events. You also have you also provide individual learning experiences on the farm. So how did that all come to be?
I think it's my natural tendency to want to share, as I was saying earlier, and kind of communicate and share that knowledge. I think that it's general in the environment of, I think, the alpaca industry. The people with alpacas are very happy to talk about alpacas and to share their knowledge with others who are interested and are particularly thinking of owning them. But generally, most people I know who've got alpacas, they'll talk alpacas all day. So it was a way of trying to give people access to the alpacas that might otherwise never have that opportunity. And so we do the open days are, they got out of hand, really. We became victims of our own success, where we ended up with one bank, but we used the bank holiday, public holidays for them. And we had 240 people turn up, pretty much all at the same time. The car park was heaving. I was doing a farm walk, and I had about 60 people in the group. And by the time I got to the place I was going to do the first bit, the tail enders hadn't actually left the car park. So it was too big. I didn't feel so comfortable. So we rejigged things to give a better experience for people. So we do it, as you say, ticketed, and brought the numbers down so it's more manageable. And it shifted slightly in terms of the people who come, but it means that people who are really interested are coming, and they get a better experience, and I'm able to provide that for them. And that works really much, much better, I think. And then we do the training and stuff for people who are thinking about alpacas, who have got alpacas that need help to know what they need to do to care for them. We sometimes get groups, sometimes schools, or there's the Dyers, Weavers and Spinners Guild. There's various around the country. There's various groups that we've had visits from them, and we took them into the room where we've got all the stores of the fleece, and it was like children in a sweet shop. All these ladies were, because they were all ladies at that time, they were absolutely over the moon, and lots of them bought lots of fleece to take away with them. So that was fun. So yeah, there's a general interest, and then there's a specific interest, and we can provide the training and stuff for people if they need that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You also host tours for birthdays and anniversaries and weddings as well.
Oh no, I try to stay away from weddings. It's really difficult. People are keen. They think it's wonderful now, and they've seen pictures of alpacas at weddings, and I'm thinking, oh no, that lovely white dress just doesn't. Oh, the thought of the green spit from the alpacas over the white dress. Now you've got to upset an alpaca to make it spit. People ask, do they spit? Well, they do, and they're usually spitting at each other. And I happen to be stood in the wrong place, or the other one ducks or whatever. So I get spat at, or I'm sticking needles in the babies doing vaccinations and things, and the mums don't like it, which is, again, it's fair enough. But yeah, no, I haven't trained any of my alpacas up to do that kind of public thing. I just think, it's such an important day. I just wouldn't want to feel responsible for the alpacas behaving themselves, and I wasn't sure they were going to. So yeah, but no, we do things where people will come for birthdays, and we have young children and a whole range of ages. It's not just women. It's not just older people. It's the whole range, which is great. So.
Mm-hmm. And the magic that you experience with alpacas, how do you interpret that? I mean, or do you even have to interpret that?
Well, often you get a couple that'll come, and the partners kind of bought the experience for the birthday or whatever, because their partner is really mad about alpacas, and then they turn up, and you kind of go, okay, they're kind of here under sufferance. The other partner is absolutely delighting. Oh, it's so excited about the alpacas. But by the end of the time we've been together, then they've usually come round, and they really have enjoyed being around the alpaca. Didn't realize they were like that, etc. And so there's a real connection. Yeah, we usually manage to win people over, even if they're less enthusiastic to begin with. But yeah, but no, it tends to be self-selecting. People who are really interested in alpacas will come. And but those that are not, we'll win them round.
And so what is a visit to the farm like?
Okay, so people will turn up. It depends where the alpacas are. I have them out loose. You have to come through a gate, which is closed when people arrive. I've got to listen out and make sure I hopefully can be there to let them through the gate, because they sometimes get a bit confused. And we then go find the alpacas wherever they are in the field, and we'll approach them slowly and stand around talking, and the alpacas just go back to grazing. And then they come over and have a little look at us, and they sneak up behind you to have a sniff. They want to check who you are and what you're like, just by having a sniff of you. So that being immersed in the alpacas, and we've got various groups of younger ones and the older males and the larger group of females. And then we do some wonderful homemade cake, courtesy of my wife. She's an excellent cook. So we do tea, coffee, and homemade cake, and then we go feed the alpacas. We don't give them cake, but we then give them their normal food. And so people are standing there with a bucket, with 5 alpaca heads all shoved into this bucket, all feeding at the same time. So it's an immersive experience. People are surrounded by these alpacas, and usually they move away. If you move towards them, they move away. So if you've got food, they don't move away so much. So you can sneak a little touch, and you can be around them. And as close to them, closely than most people are ever going to manage to get. So that's the kind of things we do.
And you offer a tour of the valley as well.
Yeah, well, we do that as we go around, because it's a valley with different areas, different habitats, and with the different fields where the alpacas are. But as I mentioned earlier, it was a reservoir, Victorian built, so 1874. It was providing clean water for Swansea. So alongside the amazing silence and quiet and the birds and the things, we've got the remnants of that industrial archaeology almost. We got things that are not used anymore, but the remnants of the amazing stonework and things that were done. So we talk about the history of the place as well, and we see various things. We've got a lot of natural life around the edge of the lake, because we've got a lake in the middle of the valley as well, which is about 3.5 acres of water, so it's a reasonable sized one. And we got a lot of progression through the year. So you get the damselflies, the bright blue ones, early in the year, and they goes through, and you start to see some of the dragonflies will start to appear, and then they got different types of those, different colors, different species of dragonflies goes through. One time we were going around and with alpaca visit, and somebody said, "Oh, was that a furry duck?" A furry duck? Don't think so. Not sure what that is. And we looked a bit more, and there it was, and it was an otter. So a visitor, not a permanent feature, but we also have a range of water fowl as well. So we get Canada geese that come and nest here. We've got ducks around. We have the moorhens and some little grebes as well, and then woodpeckers and magpies and a whole range of things, and some ravens. And there's something going on all the time. And we've got red kites that actually nest here, and buzzards are up the other end of the valley. They occasionally clash in the middle of the valley and do clever aerobatics, trying to keep each other out of each other's airspace. So there's something happening somewhere in the valley all the time. And then you go smaller, you look at the fungi, the progression of flowers through the whites, yellows, and blues, and then back through the purples and back into the yellows. And as the wavelength of the light changes, it changes the colors of the flowers as you go through the year. So there's a lot to be seen. So the farm walk includes all of that.
Wow. It sounds like a wonderful experience.
Oh, you have to come sometime.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And you also have, to complement the activities on the farm and Welsh Valley Alpacas, a podcast.
I do.
Which is called the Alpaca Tribe.
Yeah.
Tell us about the podcast.
Okay, well, that was recognizing that there was a lot of stories to tell about the alpacas. There's a lot of knowledge to pass on to those who would find it helpful. And the smaller, the people who've got smaller numbers of alpacas sometimes get kind of a bit stranded in the middle, where they're not big breeders. They've got their animals. They're not likely to be buying more, and therefore they kind of get a bit neglected, and they've got some expectation but haven't been able to meet that. So the podcast was a way of trying to share that kind of knowledge, that the kind of things that would be helpful to think about and to try and do, and a way to approach those things. So it's quite practical, but is also peppered with stories of the alpacas, and because they've all got individual characters and the way they behave, etc. So where we are, we've got a catchment area of a travel distance to get to us. The podcast takes it much wider. In fact, it takes it all around the world. And there are people listening in Australia and Japan and throughout Europe and throughout America. So we've got a lot of listeners in America, which is really lovely. So that's quite an interesting experience, having done the podcast and being able to communicate and kind of paint the pictures with words. You can paint with light when you're taking photographs, and I'll try to share the appropriate pictures on the website as well, alongside the audio of the podcast. So it's painting with words or painting with light as you're taking pictures, trying to share something of what's here, really.
How did you build your audience for your podcast and also for your business?
Yeah, well, you've got to kind of, with that, you need to think about who they are and where they live. I'm not thinking about their physical address, but where do they live digitally? Because that's generally the way that you can connect with people. So for some people, they've signed up for an email newsletter, but it's kind of one way. And I'm pushing stuff out to them and they receive it. So some of the other stuff, what about, where are the people? There's some large communities on Facebook. With alpacas, people love alpacas, so they take pictures of them and they share the pictures. So Instagram, and then that flowing through into Facebook. So that's where I've found that a lot of my community, a lot of the alpaca connections are based on Facebook. So that's where I've used that as a vehicle to also share details about the events that we've got happening here and the offerings that we're able to make in terms of the visits. And it's therefore trying to make the connections and then be consistent and keep showing up. And doing the weekly podcast and keep doing that so you can draw people's attention to the latest one. And it's not going to be for everybody, because some people are really interested in fiber and some people are really interested in the stories, and some in I want to keep alpacas. So I should talk more about that. And so you can't do everything all the time, but over a period of time you can reach quite a large range of people. So that's how I've found that my connection is best. And then there's just people like they follow. I mean, we've got about 1,000 followers on Facebook for the Welsh Valley Alpacas side of things, which absolutely astounds me. How did that happen? But people really, really respond, and we get interactions going backwards and forwards, and people commenting on things. So that's it takes time, but it's showing up, being consistent, and sharing things that you know are going to be of interest to the audience.
Mm-hmm. What topics haven't you explored yet?
Haven't explored. Ooh, there's some things like the doing the breeding side of things for alpacas. It's a bit more detailed. I mentioned it in passing, but the detail of how you approach that, the the practicalities of how you manage the males and the females, and keeping the records and all those kind of things. That's a bit more of a almost a niche kind of area, and that's not necessarily information everybody's going to need. Or no, some people are not necessarily going to want to hear about either. Some people will be interested, but yeah, so that's a tricky one. I'm not sure how to do that appropriately. And some of it, I do realize with a podcast, you've got great the audio and you've got the sounds and some sounds from the barn, etc. we can use at times. But how do you demonstrate in a podcast how to shear or how to trim the toenails of an alpaca? So there's a limitation up to a point. I can put some pictures up, but actually then little video clips and things add into the mix as well, I think. So there's other ways of being able to share. So that some of the stuff I haven't done because it doesn't fit with the audio or with still photographs, but it would be better done as little video clips. So there's another skill set to learn. But there we are.
So what's next for you? Is developing video clips next for you, or what else is next for you?
I think that's part of it. I think the alpaca tribe is growing in terms of the connections and the listeners. It's ticking along and growing throughout the world, which is, again, I stand amazed by. But I think it's trying to make sure I can carry on getting the stuff to the right people. Not for everybody, but who is it for? Can I make sure that I'm targeting things to them, and trying to find a way of bringing people together. I think there's a benefit in cross connections of people in the alpaca community, and some of the stuff is kind of two-way within Facebook, but it's some people don't get on very well with that as a platform. So I'm looking at other options of having an online community connection there. So that's the alpaca. I think building some of more the international connections
You've been doing this independent work for over 11 years. You began with this impulse to go explore alpacas, and you've developed a huge community and a business and workshops and public experiences, and now a podcast, which extends your reach even further. What have you learned about community building through the past 11 years? What would be some advice for someone who's just beginning to build their community or wants to strengthen their community?
I think one of the key things that immediately springs to mind with that is it takes time. And actually, the numbers are not that significant. Large numbers don't necessarily mean a good community. It's making connections, appropriate connections with the right people, and finding a way of it not just being a one-way thing. It's, I've got something I want to sell you. It's only going to go so far. You've got to have the people who want to buy from you. But if it's something, I've got something I'd like to share with you, and maybe further down the line, or there are things that you might want to buy as well. But actually, the emphasis is more on the building a connection and a relationship with that group of people, and trying to find a way of those people interacting together as well. That, I think, is a way of having a cohesion in the community, a feeling connected. People know about us, and some have been here, and they feel like they almost belong. Some more than others, and some they come back over and over again, which is great. We love to see people returning, and they arrive as friends. We recognize them, and there's a connection. Oh, it's great to see you again, etc. So that kind of friendliness and openness, and building something for the long term. So it's going to start small, it's going to build, and you need to put in the stage points, and not just see it as a way of monetizing something. I think that's, I think that there may be things that you can sell, and there is a business dimension to what we're doing for sure. But actually, the community building side of it is make the connection, gather the people in whatever way that can be online or it can be physically, and then build slowly over time. But all the time bringing stuff that is of benefit and adding value to people.
Yes, very, very good advice, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure. Really, really good to catch up with you.
Thank you for your company today. To learn more about Welsh Valley Alpacas and the Alpaca Tribe podcast, visit the show notes. In the show notes, you'll also find a link to the waterside. It turns out that the people who sign up for alpaca experiences are not the only ones who find the valley and the alpacas magical. People from the corporate world discover magic on the farm too. Learn more in the show notes at talaterra.com. Talaterra is a podcast for and about independent educators working in natural resource fields and environmental education. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with friends and colleagues. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Tania Marien.